Hello, I'm Tim, and the composer I chose for my topic is Max Bruch. Well, Max Bruch is a German Romantic era composer, most well known for his permanent repertoire, the Violin Concerto No. 1. Behind his concerto, he published over 200 works, consisting of various instruments back from opera all the way to cello, violin, and other instruments. As you can see in this timeline, Bruch was a composer during the Romantic era. His published works all have dramatic, intense, romantic, and energetic characteristics which we'll explore soon in the later slides. Before we look into his beautiful works, let's look at how his childhood was like. Inspired by his professional soprano mother, Bruch was naturally a child prodigy in music. Composing at the age of 9, Bruch rapidly developed his musical skills. At a young age, Bruch won Frankfurt Mozart Stiftung Prize, which allowed him to study with other successful composers such as Reineck. He grew up in places that were dominated by Mendelssohn's work, and he was also influenced by Mendelssohn's work as well. Bruch became more and more influential as his violinist friends Pablo de Sarasate and Joseph Joachim helped Bruch to focus on how violin can sing a better melody than a piano, and melody is the soul of the music. The music that he created for violins still remains as today's one of the most played and enjoyed concertos. Through support and hard work, Bruch was able to publish the Violin Concerto No. 1, which is the piece he is most well known for. Let's now take a minute to enjoy and listen to the third movement of Bruch's Violin Concerto No. 1, played by the violinist Hilary Hahn. Well, that was one energetic, intense, yet romantic and beautiful piece of music, and that is also one of my favorite parts of the music as well. And that is an example of what Romantic era classical music is like. While Bruch was a Romantic composer, he still valued traditions and folk music. That is why we can easily find folk melodies within his work. Bruch wrote a piece called Scottish Fantasy for violin. Despite the fact that Bruch was a virtual stranger to Scotland and at the time he wrote his Scottish Fantasy, the masterpiece has undoubtful Scottish melodies in it. Let's take a minute to enjoy a part of the finale of Scottish Fantasy, played by the violinist Stephen Jacob. Did you notice the orchestra's harp, pizzicato from the strings, and the trumpets mainly supporting the violin's melody? That created and supported the main melody to be more Scottish fantasy-like. Again, Bruch had never visited Scotland before writing this piece. The harmony of Bruch's style of the traditional folk melodies and Romantic era music style created even more romantic and more attractive music to the listeners. Intriguingly, all the Romantic era classical music have the finale as the most exciting, energetic, and intense characteristics. On the other hand, their second or middle movements always have a slow, charming, and lovely characteristics which comes from the classical period as well. Let's take a minute to enjoy the second movement of Violin Concerto No. 1. The previous clips of the concertos are all from the fast movements of a concerto. The violin Concerto No. 1's second movement, as assumed, follows the slow and charming yet intense characteristic pattern. In addition, within the movements, there is also cadenza, which is also introduced in the classical period. Similarly, Bruch follows the pattern. Let's take a quick look at how his first violin concerto's ad-lib cadenza excerpt is like. The cadenza is played with the musician's feelings. It shows off the skills of the soloist and it creates more dramatic characteristics in the entire music. Well, how did composers like Bruch really live as the composer of these music? Like many other composers and musicians, Bruch mostly earned his income by teaching at institutions. He taught and conducted at institutions all over Europe, at Berlin Academy of Arts and Oxford University, where he was awarded with honorary doctorate. There is no doubt that Bruch is one of the most revered composers for his folk melodies in powerful Romantic era music. Thank you for listening. This was Tim.